I'd like to call our meeting to order, please, and welcome to the regular schedule of the Grande City Council. Just for those of you who are surprised, Justin and I are changing places tonight. He's the mayor, but he can't speak right now. Okay, so I'd like to call it to order, and then please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justin Rock. David Glave is absent excused. Corinne Dudo.
Here.
Nicole Howard.
Here.
Molly King. Here. Marianne
here.
Denise Wheeler. Here.
Next is the agenda approval. Does anyone wish to, is the consent agenda, and what is on it tonight is the approval of the regular session minutes from November, awarding the contract for supply of asphalt concrete, approving letter of agreement between the city and the IAFF Local 924 on health savings contributions, and awarding contract for paving contract.
I would like to ask the council to pull items 3B and 3D and move them to the end of new business, the sidewalk and paving,
So
please.
which one?
3B and 3D.
Okay. Does anyone have any objection? Okay. So we will put those down underneath number 7 and make them B and C. Okay. Under 7. Okay. Thank you.
I move we accept the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as amended. Any objection? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move on. Our next agenda item is, public comments, I'm sorry. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak to the council about anything that is not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our public hearings. The first one is Mike.
Hang on. So, as part of the public comment, I'd like to introduce Joe Sloan, our building official. And so Joe started with us on November 4th, so this is his 1-month anniversary. And so he's a longtime resident of Grande, an electrician by trade, and most recently was an electrical inspector in Hermiston, and we're fortunate to have him as our building official, and hopefully he'll be with us for a while, and welcome.
Welcome, Joe. Yeah. Nice to have you here. Is there anything else you want to say, or to anybody? No? Well, we're happy to have you. And I know everybody in town is waiting for a building inspector. Okay. So, Mike, you're still up.
Yeah, I'm just waiting.
Oh, you want me to say, okay. The public hearing, consider the ordinance, first reading, annexation, 17 properties. And I believe there's a report. Isn't there?
If you would open the public hearing.
I have to open it, I forgot. I have
Yeah,
to open the public hearing, excuse me, guys. The public hearing is now open.
And we'll have the city recorder go ahead and read the rules at this time.
Oh, okay. Carrie, thank you. Would you read?
These rules of order are applicable to the public hearing for considering Phase 3 annexations of Area 1 through 4 into the City of Grande city limits. This is a legislative hearing, therefore counselor ex parte or pre-hearing contact does not apply. The hearing will proceed as follows. The mayor will open the public hearing and request a staff report. The mayor will then accept public testimony relating to the matter. There's a 3-minute time limit for testimony. The order of testimony this evening will begin with that of proponents, those in favor, followed by opponents, those opposed, and ending with those neutral to the ordinance being considered for adoption. The proceedings are being electronically recorded to be converted to written minutes. When testifying, please step to the podium and clearly print your name and address on the speaker sign-in sheet. Please state only your name before addressing the council. Members of the city council may ask questions of the staff at any time. Subsequent to deliberation, the mayor will close the hearing.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to start with the report?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so going back to October of '23, the city council had a work session to explore opportunities for annexation in the city, where possibilities are. And the city council directed staff to start the process and bring forward all of the properties that are eligible for annexation. And we broke that up into 3 different phases, mostly because of the different criteria involved for the types of annexation options. The very first phase were the ones where folks have city services and they signed consent to annex agreements, where they promised annexation in exchange for receiving those services. And so we did that. That was the phase 1. We did that in January of this year. And then the second phase were the remaining properties that currently have city services, water and sewer services connected to them, and that do not have agreements, and which were islands surrounded by city limits. And so that was completed, I believe, in September. So now we're on to the third phase, which is the final phase of annexation. And these are properties that all of them happen to be on the south side of South 12th Street. And most of these properties, I think there's 2 that do not have direct frontage on a city street with access to city water and sewer. There are some challenges, and you do have a letter from that property owner in your packet. All of the other properties have direct access to city services in South 12th Street or Gilchrist Drive, but none of them have city water and sewer services. And so these are all properties surrounded by islands, and these properties are broke out into 4 different groups so that you could look at them and consider them independently if you want to. But that's what's before you. So this is the last and final phase. And you do have a petition from, I think most of the property owners have signed that, and that's in your packet as well, that are not in favor of annexation. But anyway, that's all I have to share with you. This is just kind of going through the process that we've discussed a number of times, and it kind of completes the cycle. It is, because it's an island, I do want to remind you that there's a 3-year, anyway, 3 to 10 year delay period in properties in residential use before the annexation goes into effect. So even if you choose to do the second reading and adopt the ordinance in January, 3 years from that effective date is when properties would actually be annexed that are in residential use. And the only exception is if they have a transfer of ownership somewhere in between, then it's immediate. And we have selected the 3-year window. State law gives us the opportunity to do anywhere from 3 to 10 years maximum. 3 years minimum, 10 years maximum. And we selected the 3 as we've kind of gone through this process, but you do have the ability to change that if you feel a different amount of time is appropriate. But do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mike, did any of these properties have signed an agreement prior to this? Because I know now anybody building new signs it now, right?
They only sign the agreement when they request city services, and we can't
don't
annex
sign
them.
it when they
None of these properties have signed agreements.
Okay. But are we requiring people who build new now to sign something prior to that are not in the city limits?
Well, the short answer would be yes, if we can't annex them. But the reality of what occurs is pretty much everybody has the ability to be annexed because they're close enough to the city limits. And so for new construction, when they build, they're required to connect to city services, and they're required to be annexed in order to get those. So for the last couple of years, we haven't been doing any agreements because everybody's getting annexed when they ask for city services.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Does anyone have questions of Mike before?
I do, on the map, there's kind of a yellowish area.
Okay.
Is that in the city limits?
No, so that's urban, that's
That's
urban
urban
growth
growth
boundary.
boundary.
That is not an island, so that's going to remain urban growth boundary.
Okay, so from my reading of it, okay, so the white is in the city limits.
Yes,
So area 1 is surrounded by city.
yes,
Actually, all of them are, huh?
yes, all of them are.
And 4 is mostly surrounded by city, just kind of touches that.
Yeah,
It's a little lollipop on the urban growth boundary.
yeah,
Okay.
Area 4 recently became an island with the development of properties off of Gildcrest and Public Works extending water and sewer
I see
to
what
serve
that is.
those. And so that annexation kind of created that island a couple years ago.
Okay.
Now, is number 4, are we talking about number 4 tonight, too?
Yeah, 1 through 4 are
Yeah.
That's
all.
what I thought, because on here you said phase, it's the phases, yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
So, and are there properties that are connected to city services in any of these regions?
No.
So these are all, they all have wells and they're
Yeah,
on-
it's my understanding they all are on well and septic currently.
I have a question too. I mean, some of them are more feasible to connect to sewer and water, where some of them aren't. Is there any way that we can make allowances for that, or we have to do it all in one plot? Because, yeah, I mean, some of these people are going to be over 1,700 feet from a hydrant and other things like that, so.
Yeah, so that would be Area 1. So that's the letter you have in your packet, so that's Area 1. And that is a conversation that you can have with the property owners and make a decision of whether or not you want to annex them, leave it as an island, whether you want to change the 3-year to a 5-year to a 10-year.
So we can do that.
All of those things are options for you to consider, but as you consider them, I would just ask that you, I guess, look at it from the fairness of other ones that you've considered so that everybody is kind of treated equally in how you make your decision. But those are options available as you hear testimony and have this conversation. But what do you want to do? That's why we save this one for last, is because these are folks that benefit from city services primarily because of proximity to the city, but do not have city water and sewer services currently. But any of them that do have well and septic related failures will be required by DEQ to connect to city services at that time, that would trigger annexation in the future when those events happen. But anyway, that's the only other trigger besides this process.
So if these properties are annexed, what does that look like for the property owner? So are they required to hook up to city sewer water right away or not?
Or do they have that waiting period?
They're
Well,
not-
I
they're
mean,
not
once
yeah.
it happens.
They're not required to hook up ever unless they go through a process to, build a new dwelling. The new dwelling has to be connected. Or if they have a failure, then, and you're going to get a new system, then the new system would be the city system.
So,
Otherwise, they could be in the same scenario for a really long period of time.
so in Area 1, which is far from city sewer water lines, who's responsible for paying for those lines if and when they have to be installed?
That would be the property owner that is seeking that service, unless there's some other effort, that extends services closer to them. But otherwise, it is the property owner's responsibility to essentially pay their way into the system.
So I think what you're asking is what's the fiscal impact of annexation in the here and now? And it is not hookup fees, it's taxes.
It's going to be the property tax. That is the only impact that the property owners will see immediately, or 3 years from now, depending on what you set.
Or 5 or
Yeah,
whatever?
yeah, so that is the only change that would occur, that is predictable.
And we've had discussions in the past with these other properties that we've looked at, that there's no way that these property owners can get anywhere without using city streets and things that all the rest of residents are already paying for. So
Yeah, so those are those extra benefits that they benefit from.
without
you know,
paying into the
yeah,
system. So,
because of
yeah,
proximity.
it's weighing all that. Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay. So now it's open to anybody who is opposed to this ordinance. No, it's not.
Actually, it's in favor first.
Oh, favor first? Oh, I'm sorry. Those who are in favor of this annexation happening.
There you go.
Okay? Now we'll go to, I'll give it one more chance. Anybody in favor? Okay. Opposed? Please go up to the podium, write your name, and you have a 3-minute time limit.
I think I got my name on here, so, okay. My name is Tony Hamilton. My wife Karen and I reside at 1502 Bonneville Lane, and we're one of those properties that's identified on, I believe it's number 1. I'm here before you in opposition to your proposal to annex our property into the city limits. We provided a written statement outlining our brief history, concerns we have, and we hope you've had the chance to read and respond to our response. There are multiple private properties between us and city services. These properties form a barrier which prevents us access to city services. We only have ingress and egress from access to 12th Street with no sewer or water easements. We or future purchasers of our property would have the cost of obtaining utilities, easements, plus costs of construction of over 1,600 feet of sewer and water lines, estimated between $180,000 and $400,000. That'd be the cost to us. The devaluation of our property is real if we are forced to buy our way to those services. We are left with many scenarios that need guaranteed answers from the city. Will we be allowed to continue using or replace our conventional septic system? Can we continue to use our well or replace if necessary? Will the city guarantee these services to my property at their expense if new rules or laws are present that prevent us from replacing our systems because of being in the city limits? We could be forced to abandon our property without water or sewer. Who will provide the fire protection? Can the city lay out over 1,700 feet of hose uphill to my house? We currently pay taxes to the Grande Rural Fire District for this protection. They have a tanker truck and other equipment that kind of fits that scenario. We understand the uniqueness of our property, but we did not create this conundrum. The best solution is to leave us in the county. I ask you to exercise your authority to exclude the 2 properties on Bonneville Lane from your annexation plan. I believe you can accomplish this tonight and relieve the stress that this process has caused us, plus the devastating potential financial impact this could have on us. I ask you again to exclude these properties, allow us to regain control of our future. I thank the council for giving me the opportunity to express my opposition. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
I think we've probably seen your letter, Tony, that
Pardon?
we read the letter.
Okay, good.
Submitted. Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
My name is Arthur Crocker, and my opening statement is that this is not the right time to annex 1506 Bonneville Lane into the city of LeGrand. These are the facts. 1506 Bonneville Lane has no access to sewer and water. There is a solid physical barrier 1,200 feet in length between the current city sewer and water services on 12th Street and my property at 1506 Bonneville Lane. This solid physical barrier is a 20-foot wide private gravel road owned by 2 property owners. There is no current designated path to get city sewer and water to my property. In conclusion, I suggest LaGrande City Council delay the annexation of 1506 Bonneville Lane indefinitely, or at least until city sewer and water services become available to my property at 1506 Bonneville Lane. Kyle Carpenter, with your Public Works Department, is aware of this situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arthur, which area is yours in on the map? Do you have our?
I'm right below his, I'm in Area
You're in
1.
as well?
I'm the larger of the 2 properties in Area 1.
Okay, I see it. Yeah, we don't have the addresses on it, so it makes sense now.
Tax lot 100.
Okay. Thanks. Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any reason I would need to stay?
It's up to you. You can.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else who is opposed?
Hello, I'm James Holloway, speaking on behalf of my wife who owns our property and all of our neighbors. I'm addressing your proposal to annex 15 properties into the city of LaGrande. I understand you have the laws to allow you to do it. We're asking you to consider not annexing us and let the natural course of the home sales facilitate the annexing of our homes. We're bound to sell eventually. Your proposal is taxation without representation. The double our property taxes and we get no benefit. Yes, you have sewer and water, we don't need it. We already pay for the road. Okay, not only is this a considerable hardship on us, but we hope you have in good conscience would understand. Most of us in the selected area are retired on fixed incomes. With the economy in the past few years causing drastic increase in all our expenses, adding this to our debt load won't help us. Your law do allow you to do this. Does not require you to do it. We realize doing this improves your budget significantly, but it will harm ours significantly. We have clearly expressed our desire not to be annexed and hope you will respect us enough to consider our position on that matter. Thank you. Questions?
Anyone has any questions? Thank you. Anyone else who is opposed to this annexation?
Yeah, my name's Art Stefan. I'm a property owner up on 12th Street in, I think it's number 4. Is that right, Mike? Anyway, we've been up there for quite a long time, really longer than the pavement on, any pavement on 12th Street's been there. I think some of the other people here have been there that long too. So the idea of being forced into the city after we've been there that long is kind of a negative as far as I'm concerned, and I think some of the other people. So it seems reasonable, rather than to force people in, to let those property be acquired, as Jim mentioned, through natural sale of the property. That way you wouldn't be forcing anybody. So anyway, that's my view on it.
Did you sign in on the?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who would like to, who is opposed?
Hi, my name's Sean Bohannon. I live on 706B, South 12th. I have 2 property lots up there. My second one is the one that's being affected by this. I have no plans to build anything on that or anything like that, so I would never need city services on that lot. It's not going to affect me as much as my other neighbors, but, you know, I'm just asking, yeah, that we go against this just because it's going to really affect my neighbors, and I don't want to see them in hardship. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, and city staff, good evening. My name is David Teesfeld. My wife Jamie and I own 2 of the properties that will be impacted by this. The property that our house is on and the vacant lot that we bought right next door to us to keep anybody else from building on it because we enjoy our view. I went down to the assessor's office yesterday and they gave me the flyer. Our tax rate is currently $11.50 per $1,000 of assessed value. If we get annexed, it changes us to code 010, and that fee will go up to $18 per 1,000 of assessed value. So how does that impact us? Our house for 2025 is currently paying property taxes of $4,640. If we get annexed, it's going to increase our taxes by an additional $2,363 for a total of $7,000 a year. That's for our house. For our lot, we're currently paying $604. If we get annexed, it'll increase our property taxes by an additional $341 for a total of a vacant lot of $946. Like Sean, we bought our vacant lot to keep somebody from building on it and not mess up our view. Same thing with the 2 properties that Mendoza bought. He didn't want anybody building and taking out his view. If we get annexed, our property taxes total on our 2 properties are going to be $8,000 per year instead of $5,200. That's a $2,800 increase in our property fees. We've owned our house since 2008. The city has always said they would not force annex any properties not receiving service. That has been meeting after meeting after discussion with city staff. They've always said that to me. We are not going to force you to annex if you're not receiving services. I don't know what's changed. Most of these properties, we're not using city parks, we're not using the city pool, we're not using any other city services. Grande is the shopping hub for the entire county. Almost everybody in Union County has to use Grande city streets to get their shopping done. So by the logic on the flyer that we got, the city should be looking at annexing the entire county because they use the roads also. We use a burn barrel on our property. I have since we've moved here. City doesn't allow that. Are you going to grandfather us in so we can continue to use our burn barrel and not have to pay some kind of a fee every year for that? Most of our properties are rural in nature, and they're larger than most of the properties that are in Grande. Just let me finish this point, please. We get cougars, raccoons, skunks on our properties. We currently have a right to discharge firearms and dispatch predators. If we get annexed, are you going to grandfather in the discharge of firearm rights that we currently have? And are you going to charge a fee to us if you do? Thank you for your time.
Anyone else who is opposed to this annexation wishing to speak? Seeing none, is anyone in neutral on this issue? Okay. All right, council discussion?
Mike, can I ask a couple questions of you, Mike, that came up in the course and just sort of tracked them? Principally, I want to know if a sale of any of these properties triggers annexation.
It only triggers annexation if you adopt the ordinance, because that is a trigger that changes the delay or the waiting period. If you do not pass the ordinance and you just leave the properties the way they are, there is no trigger. The only trigger for annexation is when they come to the city and say, I want city services. That is the only trigger. Changing of ownerships, they can change 100 times and it won't trigger anything. It's, so that trigger for sale, it would only occur, annexation would only occur if you adopt the ordinance and put a 3 to 10 year
Okay. So
delay.
there's not a mechanism in place right now to make that happen?
Correct.
Okay. My second question is, one gentleman mentioned paying into the rural fire district. When we looked at the previous set of annexations, they were paying like 1.5 for water and sewer, right? And that was going to go down. In this case, I'm wondering if the rural fire district drops off.
It does.
That amount does, okay. And is there someone suggested already paying for the road, and there's no fee, there's no way in which these homes are paying into Public Works now, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have it right. All right, thanks.
Okay, I have a question. So just like was mentioned, you know, they could do firearms, they could do a burn barrel. So how will that affect them? I think that's the kind of answer that they want to know.
There's just different rules for being in the county versus the city. So some of those, that's a fire chief question, but I would assume the burn barrel opportunity would go away because we don't allow that in the city. The firearms is the same thing. That's allowed in the county, but not in a city environment. And so some of those things that they enjoy today, they may not enjoy tomorrow. And so those are some of the trade-offs in going from county to city. But something else to look at that is, I think it's in discussions, but it's not, obvious and hasn't been pointed out, is some of these properties over the years have taken advantage of the opportunities the city provides them with city zoning. All of these properties in the urban growth boundary are zoned city zones, and they're provided with land use opportunities that you cannot have in the county. You can't divide your property into the size parcels that exist out there today. And so some of these properties were created because of the city zoning and because they're in the urban growth boundary. So they've already taken advantage of the city land use and, the opportunities that city residents get to enjoy. And some of them have not. Some of them, were created before those rules were put in place, but several of those were. And so I think that is something to think about. Is it's not just that we're in the county, we've been in here for 20-something years. Some of them have taken advantage of the opportunities that being in the city allows, because you're in the urban growth boundary that you cannot do if you're outside the urban growth boundary. And that is the intent of the urban growth boundary, is those properties are intended to eventually come into the city. And so we offer those land use opportunities to those properties as part of being in the urban growth boundary. And, so if you take advantage of those opportunities, that is a concession that I think is worth consideration.
I think one contrast of these particular properties to the ones that we've previously gone through this process and annexed is those were definitely smaller lots, more kind of within the main part of the city, and these definitely are larger lots and a more rural feel to it. So they do look different than the other ones.
They do.
To me. So.
Mike, what about the property of the ones that go up Bonneville Road, that they have no fire, they can't get the fire trucks up there, can they?
Yes, the fire trucks can get up there. That's a fire chief question. I don't know the answer for what fire service is going to look like after annexation, but we also have mutual aid agreements with other fire districts, and I don't think there's any issue with providing fire service. It's just a matter of who's going to be your first responder versus who's backup. That's the only.
Honestly, it really won't change at all. Currently, there is the benefit to those members of the rural department. Like the people
I think
on Bonneville Lane.
you might want to go up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to make you stand up.
Anybody that pays taxes to the rural department gets the benefit of our automatic aid agreement with them. So what happens with an automatic aid is anytime LeGrande is dispatched to a fire or LeGrande Rural, we both respond immediately. So we're both dispatched on the same box alarm. So the benefit to those members is you can just look at distance. For the rural to respond, it takes longer. They're also a volunteer department, so they have to go to the station, pick up equipment. They're very good at what they do, but it's just a time thing. Our department responds immediately with paid staff. So there is a benefit from that. And we have mutual aid agreements, which are different. The responding units are typically the department that's covers that area as a first district. Once they get there, if they need help, they call for help. So that then help is delayed, if that makes sense.
So there's not an issue of getting the fire equipment to those residences?
With the steepness of some of those roads, sure, there's the same issues with the rural department as us. If it's snowy and terrible weather, the amount of water that gets there, we use their tenders just like they would use them. Like I said, the benefit is our department would respond more than likely first, and then they would be coming automatically to give us a water supply. We do have the ability to lay 2,000 feet of water in a main line, essentially. It's a big process, but anybody that's that far from a hydrant, it's a process, but it takes both departments to do it.
Thank you. Molly, did you
A
have a question?
question more for Mike. Are any of these homes that are out there in the urban area or the county, is there any farm animals out there? And once if they are annexed into the city, do they have to get rid of their farm animals?
It will not have to get rid of them. That's a grandfathered thing that they get to keep, but I don't know the answer to which ones have farm animals and which ones do not.
Chickens or whatever?
Yeah, so we allow chickens in the city, but I think it's more the horses, cows, goats, and pigs, and who knows what. But I don't know what, many of these properties don't have farm animals, but I'm sure some do.
Okay, Mike, could you explain, though, when I was reading this earlier today, I was looking at, happened to be Tony Hamilton's property, that you have two of them on there, one that says it would be the 3-year and one would be immediately. And why is that? I don't understand.
So that's the way state law has the ordinance written, unless you change it. But it's the way state law is, if a property is in residential use, which means if there's a house on it, it is subject or whatever, then it would be immediately annexed.
Oh, but there is a house on their property.
But like for Tony's property, he has 2 tax lots. One of them is vacant. It's essentially
It's the same address,
part of his
though.
road or driveway.
Okay,
And so that's just kind of one of those weird anomalies.
okay.
But there's a few folks.
Yeah, I saw that, but I just happened, just because I've been up to their house, I know they have a house there.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, so that's just kind of one of the
Okay.
things that state law just kind of has a weird quirk in that.
Okay, because some of the other ones you had 2 different addresses on.
Yeah.
But this one, there was only one address, and I thought, well, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because there's a number of properties that have addresses that are vacant,
Okay, right,
so,
okay, thank you.
yeah.
And to be clear, it's state law that if a well were to fail, it's then condemned.
I'm not sure on the well piece. I just know from a city ordinance standpoint, we require new dwelling units to be connected to city services. What I don't know is if a property already has a well and they wanted to drill another well for continuing that service, how state law, I haven't looked into the state law piece. I know DEQ on the sewer piece, if you're within 300 feet of city sewer, you don't have an option, you're connecting to city sewer.
If your sewer.
Failed.
Leach line fails, okay.
Yeah, so that's a different scenario. The well doesn't have that same requirement. It may have this condemned piece to it, but there may be an opportunity for somebody to drill a new well for an existing house. And so that's something that I'd have to research, but our ordinance is not specific to water. It's only specific to water when we're talking about new construction.
And DEQ's policy is 300 feet, you said?
Yeah, and so that's for,
For
septic
sewer.
versus being required to connect to municipal sewer.
Is that the vast majority of the properties?
That is everybody except area one.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's 300 feet from your property, not from
Right.
your house. It's from the property itself. And, yeah, area one is the only
Does any
area
other
that does
council
not
have
directly
Any
abut.
questions? Any questions from the council?
So is one option is to not annex. Other option is to annex, but that we have a choice of time frames, 3 to up to 10 years? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
But aren't you locked in at 3?
No.
No, you're not locked in until you adopt the ordinance, so you can change that to whatever number you want that to be.
At least 3 years and not more than 10 years after the date the city proclaims the annexation approved. So that would be something that would need to be specified.
Would you want to choose 3?
Well, we've selected 3 collectively because our intent going into this on the front end was we wanted annexation to be immediate, to go through this process and to annex properties that could be annexed. So when we started getting into the island annexation legal requirements, it was, we can't annex these immediately. So when can they be annexed? And that's where the 3 to 10 year was. And so we chose 3 years. And part of it, I guess, for my own selfish reasons, is we have to manually track this. There's no trigger for the property sale. The 3 years is a pretty easy thing when 3 years comes up. But if there's a property transaction, we have to watch and track these. And in fact, for the second phase annexation, we actually had a property transfer just occur. And so now I'm kind of going through the process, and we just stumbled across it. But that's just one of those things that if you put a 5-year, a 10-year time period out there, we don't know who's going to be sitting at the desk monitoring this at the time, but they have to be paying attention to that. And so that's part of why 3 years is nice, because it's still somewhat fresh in our minds to be able to watch and babysit that time window. But anyway, that's just my own selfish reasons, but for you in the conversation with the property owners, I think all of those options are available, and it's what you think is appropriate.
I don't know how to word this. So are we going to be voting on areas separately or all together? How are we doing that?
Yeah, they're all separate.
Those will be done separately, and they will not be done tonight.
Okay.
Those will be done at the conclusion of the second reading.
Second reading, okay.
And the council has the flexibility, as an example, to say, Area 1, because of the physical barrier, is not one that we want to annex within 3 years. Maybe it's 10 years for that one, or maybe that's just, we're not going to do it at this juncture. The ones that are immediately adjacent, that are literally right next to 12th Street, you may consider those differently, just as you did the last group of annexations. So you literally can do them area by area. I think Mike's point, and I think the council's original guidance was, we want it to be fair and equitable to those that are within the urban growth boundaries, that are receiving the ability to access many city services. I think we fixate on the water and sewer city services, but I think Mike did a good job of touching on the other benefits of being within the urban growth boundary that people are enjoying.
And this comes for the second reading in January, is that right?
It does. It'll be done before the current city council transitions.
Any other questions? Okay. Could we ask the city recorder to please read the proposed ordinance for the first time by title only?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LeGrand, Union County, Oregon, declaring certain territory annexed to the City of LeGrand, Union County, Oregon, specifically properties located within Area 1 in Township 3 South, Range 38 East, Section 17 and 17BA, and removing said property from the LeGrand Rural Fire Protection District and declaring an effective date.
Thank you.
We have three more that we have to read.
Pardon?
We have to read all four.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, declaring certain territory annexed to the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, specifically properties located within Area 2 and Township 3 South, Range 38 East, Section 17BA, and all adjacent 12th Street right-of-way, and removing said property from the LaGrande Rural Fire Protection District and declaring an effective date. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, declaring certain territory annexed to the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, specifically properties located within Area 3 and Township 3 South, Range 38 East, Sections 17BA and 17BD, and all adjacent 12th Street right-of-way, and removing said property from the LaGrande Rural Fire Protection District and declaring the effective date. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, declaring certain territory annexed to the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, specifically properties located within Area 4 in Township 3 South, Range 38 East, Section 17BD, and removing said property from the LaGrande Rural Fire Protection District and declaring an effective date.
Thank you. We will have, this concludes the public hearing. We will continue it on January 8th, 2025, at which time the proposed ordinance are scheduled to be read by a second time by title only and put to a vote. Thank you.
Do you want to take just a minute to let those that don't want to stick around for the rest of the meeting to go ahead and head out?
If there's anybody who wishes to leave, they can leave now. If they want.
Yeah, you will have an opportunity to, for public testimony at the meeting in January as well.
Keep this from moving around.
Don't touch it. Sorry, that wasn't the answer you wanted.
Do you want to just go page to page and not have it move?
Which I mean, not with this part, but it's with the next one. Yeah, I could figure it out.
Yeah.
Because I was always down in this area. It was always
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think you just have to go on a straight line. Sorry.
okay, that's okay.
She wants it not to wobble.
Okay, we'll now move into unfinished business. New business, consider the resolution reallocating ARPA funds to sidewalk projects.
Wait,
We're
no,
on 5B.
Oh, 5B, God, I put my glasses on.
there's a lot of pages on here. Give her a little grace.
Yeah.
Marianne, it's not easy to do it very well.
It is, okay. Ordinance, I'm sorry. First reading annex, we already did that one.
Page 41 on the digital packet.
So this is the public hearing to consider an appeal of
okay.
Landmark's decision.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're talking about. Okay, appeal the Landmarks Commission's decision, appliance, and more. Mike?
Okay, we'll start with the rules of order.
But first, if you would open the public hearing.
I would like to open the public hearing.
You're the mayor. See where it says mayor? That's
Yeah, I know. Okay, I'm opening the public hearing and on the appeal for the Landmarks Commission decision, appliance and more. How's that?
You're playing the role of mayor. Okay, sorry.
Okay, Mike?
The City Council will conduct one quasi-judicial public hearing. These rules of order are applicable to the public hearing to consider an appeal of a Landmarks Commission decision, file number 01-LCA-24, applicant Jay and Kristen Wilson. The hearing will proceed as follows. The mayor will request the staff report, which includes applicable criteria and standards for the issue under consideration in the application. As part of the staff report, the applicant may have the opportunity to address the commission prior to public testimony. Subsequent to opening the public hearing, the mayor will accept testimony relating to the application. The mayor may state a time limit for testimony. All testimony must be directed toward the applicable criteria. Oregon land use law requires that all issues raised by a participant during the hearing must be sufficiently clear and specific to allow the hearing body and other parties an opportunity to respond to those issues. Failure to raise the issues during the hearing may invalidate future appeal. The proceedings are being electronically recorded to be transcribed in written minutes. When testifying, please step to the podium and state your name. Before leaving the podium, please complete the speaker sign-in sheet. The applicant will be invited to speak first, followed by proponents, then by opponents, and then by any parties neutral to the application. An opportunity will be provided to parties to clarify any issues raised or to rebut testimony. Proponents, then opponents, will be provided an opportunity to clarify any issues or to rebut testimony. If additional documents or new evidence is introduced during the hearing, any participant may request a continuation of the hearing. Any participant may request that the hearing record be kept open for 7 days to submit additional written evidence or testimony for the purpose of responding to new evidence. Unless waived, the applicant has 7 days to submit a written response. Members of the City Council may ask questions of the staff or hearing participants at any time. The mayor may then close the hearing or continue the hearing at a specified time and place. All decisions must be based on findings of fact from the staff report or evidence and testimony received which relate to the criteria of the land use decision. An appeal of the City Council decision must be made in writing to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, together with the required fee within 21 days from the date that the final decision is mailed to the applicant and interested participants. Before the mayor requests the staff report for the public hearing, the city councilors will be asked to make any declarations. A councilor must declare any ex parte or pre-hearing contact, including the person's name and the nature of the discussion, as well as any site visitations to the area in question. Councilors should declare any personal or financial interests in this matter and may disqualify themselves from participating in the hearing. The mayor will then ask if anyone in the audience wishes to challenge the right of any councilor to hear this matter.
Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge the right of any councilors to hear this matter?
Excuse me, first, we need to ask the councilors if they have any declarations of ex parte communications.
That's not on here. Okay. Does any councilor? No? Okay. Anyone wish to challenge the right for one of the councilors to hear this matter? Okay. Then I would like to have the staff report, please.
Okay, thank you, Council and Mayor. So I'm going to give you some background first on the historic district, and then we'll go through the chain of events and then the appeal that's before you. This is an appeal of a Landmarks Commission decision that dates back to August of 2023, and with the most recent decision that is being appealed from September of this year, of 2024. And so some background is in 1999, Grande established our downtown historic district, which encompasses pretty much the entire downtown from between Washington and Jefferson through our entire downtown corridor. And the historic district is filed. It's a National Register listing, and so it carries state and federal requirements for historic preservation. And as part of that historic district, we have a lot of property owners that receive grant opportunities through the federal government or state, whether it's through tax credits or grants or whatever that is. So it's a very big deal for our downtown. And in addition to that, we've created a local program through the urban renewal to provide a significant amount of grant funding for facade grants and project grants for doing projects on historic buildings to make them more viable for purposes that benefit the district. And so in the district, there's 4 categories of historic buildings. Those categories are a hierarchy of significance. Starting at the bottom end, we have our non-contributing buildings. These are buildings that they're fairly new in our history. They have pretty much no historic value. Those would be like the Wells Fargo building and U.S. Bank. It would be like the Zipley building, which was Frontier or Verizon. So those are our non-contributing buildings. There's a lot of flexibility in what folks do with those buildings because they essentially have no historic value. The next level in the hierarchy are the historic non-contributing buildings. These are historic buildings, but they've been significantly altered to the point to where there's very little historic integrity left. And they also have a lot of flexibility in what they can do to modify their buildings because there's very little value left, but they are historic. They date back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and are an important part of our downtown. The next level, which is, I consider it the highest level in our historic district, even though there's a fourth level, is these are the historic contributing buildings. These are those 1800, early 1900 buildings that have a lot of historic integrity left. They're very valuable to our downtown. These are our priority for preservation. And the appliances and more building is in that category. Other buildings in that category are like the EO&I building, our Fire Museum building, and Red Cross Drug is in that category. And so those are high priority buildings because there's a lot of historic integrity left on those properties. Then the fourth level are ones that we don't have to worry about a whole lot because these are ones that are individually listed on the National Register. So they are essentially babysat kind of at the federal level by by watchdogs in that category. Our State Historic Preservation Office babysits those, but that's buildings like City Hall where we're individually listed and stuff like our trim and all, we have in upper floors, we have plastered and rounded ceiling edges. And there's a lot of value in these buildings. And we don't have to worry about them too much because they're already fully restored and they're on the National Register. There's not a whole lot that happens with those other than maintenance. But the historic contributing is our highest value that we pay attention to most of the time. So that kind of gives you the background of where we're at in significance and why this project is important to our Landmarks Commission as we've kind of gone through that and why it's important to the city. So as far as the application process and the historical events that are in your packet and all of those exhibits, there's a lot of information. A lot of it is redundant, similar information because it is the record. And so as information goes on from one meeting to the next, that information passes on with it. So as you see different meetings before the Landmarks Commission, everything that was presented to them is in that packet. So you'll see stuff from the first hearing that was included in the second one. But so in August 2023, Appliances and More came to the Landmarks Commission for 4 projects. They had a storefront replacement project on Jefferson that removed a storefront and added a big roll-up garage door for vehicle access and service. There were 3 projects on Greenwood. There's one that modifies 2 of the recessed entries and changing the windows. So you'll see a permit in one of the exhibits for that project. And then there's a separate project for replacing all of the storefront windows that butt up against the sidewalk that are not recessed. These are the windows that are under the appeal tonight. And then the third project is to remove a different storefront that is flush to the sidewalk that has a door and a window and some transoms. And so that was the 4th project. And so the Landmarks Commission approved all of these projects except for the transom windows. Out of all of these elements, the transom windows were identified to be in good condition and are a historically significant element of this building to help characterize this building as being a historic contributing building in our district. And so therefore, they wanted those saved. And at the August meeting, we roughly spent about an hour. The applicant was the only party at that meeting. We had 1 application to consider. We spent about an hour going through all 4 of these projects. And 30 minutes of that time was specifically talking about these transom windows. And the conclusion of that was that these transom windows were important. The commission and the applicant spent a lot of time talking about how do we save these, and everybody walked away from that meeting with an agreement that these were going to be retained, repaired, and restored. And a condition of approval was added to that decision order to identify that. Then, so you'll see that in Exhibit C. So then in January, the applicant submitted for building permits. And with those building permits, the applicant applied for 2 separate permits, and those included all of the projects except for the transom windows. And so you'll see those in Exhibits D and E. And so, and with that building permit, that first starts at our office, we do zoning approval. And that zoning approval was granted for those projects because that was, they were asking to do what the Landmarks Commission approved. And a copy of the Landmarks Commission approval with the conditions of approval to retain the historic transom windows was included in that zoning approval. And so that project went for, both of those projects received permits, and that is in those exhibits that, that you'll see in your packet. And so while we're talking about permits, one of the things that is in your Exhibit A in the applicant's submittal is a permit that they've identified that they have submitted and received approval for with copies of documents that that go with that permit. And for our record, that's a valid application form, but it was never turned in. That is not something that is on file with our building department. No permits have been issued for that. And then to kind of go with that, the information that's attached to that application form, in my evaluation of that, came from different source documents and do not go together. So the first thing that is with that is there's a picture of the Greenwood Street frontage, and below that, I think it's the last page of that exhibit, but it has a narrative below it that talks about replacing the transom windows as part of that project. That was
all Exhibit A?
Yeah, so that's in Exhibit A.
I'm with you.
And so that particular illustration with that text on it, to remove those transom windows, that is what was submitted to the Landmarks Commission in August of '23 and was denied. What was submitted in the building permit package was a very similar illustration, but it removed all of that text and does not talk about transom windows because that is not an approved part of the project. And so what was approved is the replacement of the storefront main windows, but not the transoms. And so that's the first error, at least conflict in that exhibit. The next piece with that is there's a copy of an approved building permit signed by our building official.
Okay.
That is not a permit associated with that application. That is a permit that is associated with the recessed entry application. And it has nothing to do with the storefront windows that front along the entire frontage. And so that was.
It does have some wording about the windows on there.
It has a picture, but but that permit is specifically for the storefront, the main storefront windows only. Well, there's another permit. That particular permit is for the recessed entries, which is part of the same illustration, and that's why it's in that picture. But that permit is specifically for replacing the windows in those 2 recessed entries. And so what I'm getting at is you have an application form that was never turned in with attachments to it that do not go with that permit. They go with other permits that were submitted separately and did receive permit approval, but they are for completely different projects.
I have a question, because I read all the back and forth, and there's been a lot of back and forth and so forth. It was first stated that the only thing that needed to be done with the transoms is just recaulking and painting, okay? And then later, in part of Exhibit B, a building inspector talked about the replacing of the transom because it would be structural safety, it would not be cohesive to that. And so I guess when I was beginning to read all this, I was going to say, so who made that decision? Was there a building inspector or anybody checking out the transoms and seeing if that's all they really need? I mean, structurally, are they sound? I mean, who really checked that out?
The only record, the only thing that we can verify is, right, the only thing that we can verify is the applicant's contractor looked at that. there's no record that an inspector visited the
Okay, so
property
nobody
or even looked at it.
Even did that. So
Yeah.
that was just an assumption from the committee that it only needed to be caulked and painted, right?
No,
The committee
no,
went on a
No,
site
so,
Well, they went on a site visit,
Can-
but
can-
did anybody go up there and
so
check?
can we save that for when I get to that?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we're kind of jumping ahead. So
Okay, I'm sorry.
let's save that for when we get to the September meeting.
Okay.
So anyway, so getting back to the permits, I just want to emphasize that there is no record of a permit for the transom windows. And so as we've kind of moved forward with this, nothing's been changed in the storefront. There's no permit issued. And so, I think that is an important piece of the record that is incorrectly identified. And I don't want you to have any assumptions or understanding that there is a permit issued, because there is not.
Okay, Mike, just to refresh you then, the building permit application that's in here on section, Exhibit A was not submitted.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
That is not on file with the building department, and there is no record that that exists.
And there's no date on here that, I'm not, of the applicant, there's no date that the applicant filled it out. There's no date on here at all.
We don't know where that came from, because the first we saw that was in this appeal.
Oh, okay.
So is this,
You will be after the staff report. And you will have no time limit. There's no time limit for you. Okay, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
sorry.
Okay, so then, so after these permits have issued, so I'm thinking it's around April, I didn't write this note down, but around April anyway is when the urban renewal grant came in. And that's when we learned that the transom windows were proposed to be removed because they were part of the urban renewal request. And at that point, the red flag went up. We checked with the building department. It's like, we have no permits for this. We're not aware of that. It's in conflict with the Landmarks Commission decision. So we put a stop work on that project to make sure, because the applicant had the contractor lined up, had already purchased the windows, and we're planning to do this project. And we put a stop on it because it hasn't been approved. And so from April until September, the project sat there, and then the applicant came back to the commission in September to ask for the commission to reconsider their request and approve the replacement of the transom windows. And so that request was based on advice or direction that we believe the contractor gave the applicant. There is a claim that the building official in January was involved, but there is no record of the building official ever even visiting the property to do an inspection. And so we can only assume and draw a conclusion that the contractor is the one that made this determination. And so when we set up the September meeting, we had no information to verify that there was any damage, deterioration, rot, anything that would render these transom windows in poor condition and able to be removed under our current code. And so what we did in order to address that, because we did not have the photographs and the evidence that clearly identified this, is we scheduled a work session on site in advance of the landmarks meeting. All of my landmark commissioners showed up, and our landmarks commissioners are highly qualified. We have contractors on there. We have folks that have architectural degrees that manage the construction of schools. We have folks that are very qualified to do these evaluations and make this determination. And they brought tools and little probes to kind of poke into the wood to see if there was rot. They inspected all of these windows, and they were all in very good condition. Not one of them had any sign of deterioration, rot, or structural integrity challenges that were alleged to exist. And the applicant did bring out a garden hose and sprayed water on the windows, and they really leaked. They leaked really bad. And the Landmarks Commission watched and observed, and it was very obvious to them what the issue was. And they identified it as, all these things are constructed of is you have a piece of glass sandwiched together with trim. And you need to caulk that trim on the glass in order to keep the water from leaking through. And so they identified for about $20, you can go buy enough caulk, you can caulk all of these windows, and they would no longer leak, and then you can paint them and seal them, and they would be like new again. And so that's what the Landmarks Commission determined as part of their public hearing. And because these were in great condition and able to be repaired and restored, they decided to uphold their original decision to deny the removal of those and require that they be retained. And so that is the outcome that is being appealed. But then the other piece that I want to get in now as we get into the appeal itself is one of the challenges that is before you tonight is typically as part of an appeal, somebody is challenging the standard or the process and identifying an error in that standard or process. That is not the case here. The process was followed. All the standards were applied correctly. None of that is being challenged. What's being challenged is that the applicant, had some understanding that they were able to remove and replace these windows. They purchased windows without Landmark's approval and planned for the construction and the install, and they are now in a bind, and the Landmarks Commission denied their request to change the decision to support that removal. And so this appeal is really asking for a variance or an exception from the city standards and is not challenging the standard itself. And honestly, I don't think it's a valid appeal because it's not appealing anything. It is asking for a variance or an exception, which is something that we are not able to support and offer. And, so as you have the conversation with the applicant and you look at this scenario, if you decide that it makes sense to reverse or overturn the Landmarks decision and to allow for this change, you would need to make a finding that identifies, and it's got to be based on facts and evidence, that these windows are in either poor condition, cannot be restored and repaired and restored, and so therefore they're in a condition that can be removed. Or you would need to identify that they are not historic and are of no value. So those are really your two choices. And we would have to change the findings in the staff report to identify that in order to meet city standards. So anyway, that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Has our building inspector seen this?
I don't believe our new building inspector, I haven't pulled him into this project because this was something that was done in January with our prior building official.
Okay.
Joe was there in January?
Yeah, Joe Fisher was there in January.
And that was before those windows were purchased.
Any questions?
Yeah, and since there's no permits on file, at this point, there's no reason for our current building department to even be involved in this because it's not a permitted project for them to even look at.
Would they be willing to check them again, or you're satisfied with what you saw, or what?
Well, I don't think it's our building. We don't provide that service where our inspectors go out before permits to evaluate the condition of buildings and projects and advise applicants on their design and what they're allowed to do. That's just not something that we do. If there's a permit and they're out there doing an inspection on something related to that project and they see something, they'll advise on how to fix something and how to do something and what needs a permit. But we don't proactively go out and inspect the structural integrity of buildings. That is something that you hire an engineer or a consultant or somebody else to do, or your contractor does that, which we believe is what occurred here.
But we don't have a form from the contractor stating it with his name on it.
We have the information in the record, but we're not able to validate that any of those claims or assertions are true when it relates to the transom. It may be true for the storefront windows. We didn't evaluate that because our review is on the transoms, because that is what was asked of the commission, and that's what's asked of your appeal, is limited only to the transoms. Everything else is approved. They could remove and replace all of that stuff.
Can the applicant request a permit approval to get the building inspector out there to approve it?
Yeah.
You can't apply for a permit for a project that doesn't exist or that's not approved. I can't give somebody zoning approval to apply for a building permit if it's something that is not allowed to be done.
But didn't you say if they had a written statement from an inspector or so forth?
I don't know if they have a written statement
No,
from
but
an
I'm saying,
inspector.
could they get one?
Not from our inspector, because our inspectors are not allowed to do
No,
that.
I mean privately.
Yes, if it was privately inspected by somebody qualified to inspect that, and it was a sufficient report from a qualified professional, then I think we would accept that. We would still, at this point, because we know what we know, we would want a second opinion. We'd want to verify that because we have inspected it ourselves. Our landmarks commissioners have personally inspected it. And we have at least 2 members on our landmarks commission that are more than qualified to make this determination. And so in my opinion, if a report came in that said that these are damaged, deteriorated beyond repair, I would question whether that was valid. And I would require that a third party unrelated to any of us validate that.
Okay.
Because I don't believe that those conditions exist based on what we know today.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay. Now, it comes to the, I'm going to invite, I want to make sure I have the right one here. Public testimony from the applicant. And as you noticed before, the applicants only had 3 minutes. You do not have that time frame.
Thank you. Jane Kristen Wilson with Appliances and More, and hopefully I remember everything. Sorry I interjected, but hopefully I wrote it all down. So, we purchased this building in the end of May, first part of June of 2023. If you've ever been by the building, there's great big windows. They're cracked. It doesn't look very pretty, and our whole entire goal, we like to have a nice storefront. We like people to not see cracked windows. Plus, it's a huge safety hazard. These windows are like falling out. So we wanted to redo our windows. When we bought our building, we were told we were not in the historic district, and later found out that we were. So
Who told you that?
the seller. So it was, what's his name? Kilpatrick. Unfortunately, he just passed away, but Eric Kilpatrick is who told us that. And then later we did find out that we were in the historic district. And so that's when we got to go before the landmark committee, and they did approve. There was a garage door on the Jefferson side, and it was really bad, and they approved that. They approved different things, of course, just things to make this look nicer. And they did approve the lower windows, but did not approve the transom windows. So at that point, when we took it back to Knee-High is our, the people doing the windows, and they came out and they did an inspection, and some of those transom windows are broken. Most all of them do leak, and I mean bad leaks. Like Mike said, if you hit it with a garden hose, I mean it comes gushing in. So they're not in the best of conditions, plus they're a single pane window. Heating that big building is very, very expensive, and so we want to make our building look nicer and also have it more energy efficient. So when they came and looked at that, their biggest fear is they remove these great big windows, and the support for the transom windows is not amazing, and so they did not know but what we might have those crash to the ground and then be standing there with windows and have to fill a space. And anyway, so they recommended that we submit to the city and ask them, which is your Exhibit A, that we submit to the city, which we did, and I did submit to its LG Building at cityoflegrand.org. I submitted this paper. So I have proof in an email that I absolutely submitted this paper that described everything that we were doing, as well as the dimensions, which describe the transom windows, because we had to do the dimensions of everything. So we did the big windows, the transom windows. We very much have this described in here. This picture that shows you, which is the Greenwood side, exactly what we wanted to do. No questions asked. It's 100% out there for everybody to see. So Joe Fisher did come. He did do this inspection. He inspected the garage door that would be coming in as well, and he inspected this and signed off. And we got this. We also got an email. I had it all marked. Hold up, I'll find it. But there was also an email that was sent to Knee-High from Mike and a Sandy. Anyway, I have it. This said, is there any problems with these windows for zoning purposes and different things? And the response was no. So with that from Joe Fisher, all of this that got sent back, we're like, awesome, we can replace these. Now, we were replacing, I don't really care about transom windows and I don't really care about these big, huge windows. If we could have done it, we probably would not have done that, but we wanted to keep it exactly what it was. For the historic purposes, we would be keeping those transom windows. Everything is exactly how it is. So we ordered the windows to replace those 4 windows exactly how they are, keeping the transom windows and everything. Windows have been ordered, okay? Because we got the approval on the 31st, which is what Joe Fisher signed off on. So I'm not sure about the permit. I know that you say that Mike says that there was no permit issued. If you actually, Nehi Enterprises pulled the permit for us, and they actually have proof of the permit. Also, I have an email from Mike telling me that the end of May, my permit was put on hold and to not go any farther. So I'm really confused, I guess, in that whole process that there's no permit, but yet I have a permit and transaction that it was paid for by Nehi. Right here is that. Right here is the permit. And right here is the, if there has not been activity for 146 days, that the permit would expire. So we're seeing that there is absolutely a permit in place. And to be honest, the windows were supposed to be done June 1st. And when we applied for the urban grant, and I don't even know how it all happened, but it shot a red flag. We were in here talking to Timothy Bishop, and then Michael came into it also, and that's when they put a hold on our permit and said, stop, you can't do these windows. So currently we have windows that are ordered, sitting at Nehi Enterprises, being ready to get installed as soon as we can get permission for that. We did go back to the urban, they did come out and do a site visit. I don't know who the gentleman, I don't know who everybody's names are, but the guy that was there, he did actually say in the meeting that we had that he could see some rot, not a lot, but he could see some rot. And then, so, I mean, I don't know how you have a building that leaks as bad as these windows do and would not cause rot to wood over time. And so our whole goal is we want a nice looking store. It's embarrassing to have these windows that we have right now that we've now had for over a year, because that's not the kind of people we like to make our buildings look, you know, presentable and nice. And cracked windows is just not energy efficient and or very appealing for customers to, and it's a huge, huge safety concern. To be, and I'm not kidding, these windows are like, they've been taped in. That's the safety factor. If the right person walked by and they fell out, it's a huge safety concern. And so that's a big deal. So let's see. Sorry, I'm just trying to see if I made sure I got all my notes taken care of here. Is there anything else?
I would just point out that the majority of that Greenwood side is not original. So for him to say it's a...
So if you guys have seen the, what do you call them? Alcove? Or what do you call?
The inlet portion.
So we got those windows replaced. They look amazing. They're awesome windows. They look great. So those were allowed to be replaced. And then where the door is, we're allowed to replace that door, which is then going to make us have to replace that section and get that one up. It's funny too, they said that that our building is in the historic district, which, or it is historic, they only care about the Greenwood side. We can do whatever we want with Jefferson, and we have, because we've put in 2 garage doors, and our plan is to make those windows look, you know, much more appealing and nicer. We can do whatever there. they just care about these transom windows on the Greenwood side that truly are broken, are leaking. I mean, we're not eliminating these transom windows because we've ordered the windows, we're replacing them, and it will look just like the windows that are in there now, except for they will be more energy efficient, they will not be cracked and falling out with a safety concern, and much more energy efficient, and on and on and on.
So you ordered new transit windows?
So it's just like this picture. It looks, so in this sketch, it's the big window down below and then the transom windows up above. So we're not eliminating them, we're replacing them. They're not going away. It's going to look identical, it's just going to be different in.
But it doesn't match the historic. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Yeah, I'll wait till my turn.
And the frustrating part too, I think, to us, we're business owners. We're not part of the city. We don't know all the different steps. We've learned them. We now know. We know a whole lot more. You learn stuff new every day. So when we went to the city should have said something to us that red flag, you need to go back to the historic district. They didn't. They gave us a stamp of approval. That next page. They gave us the stamp of approval, which was, we approve what you sent us. We approve the building permit application. I'm not quite sure how that got lost, but we approved this. So when it got sent in, it was this, and this. And then this, and that's what he stamped. So to us, that was permission to order those windows, and that's what's now been done. So, and those windows are custom for the front windows on the Greenwood Street. So they had to custom make them, custom build them for our building.
Okay. Does anyone have questions of the applicant?
Okay, just to make it clear that you're saying we're still going to have the transoms as well as the other, so they're not going away, really?
No, it's exactly how they are now, except for that one that they told us we could eliminate that front door.
Right.
Because essentially Greenwood has 3 front doors.
Correct.
And we don't ever use that one.
Right.
My understanding is it was for the kitchen when Golden Harvest?
Harvest, yeah.
When Golden Harvest had it, that was their kitchen
And
door.
the Evolution was there too.
So we're going to eliminate that door, which they gave us permission to do. And then those windows are exactly how the windows are now, with the transom windows and everything exactly how they are now.
They're not exactly the same, I just want to point out. There are 3 on the bottom in the original, and there are 4 in the new one. So the ratio's
So,
different.
Just to clarify, below the transoms, they don't care about. We can do whatever we want.
Okay,
So it's just the transoms.
Okay.
Although, and I would, honestly, I would almost argue that those transoms aren't really actually original. From my understanding, those were big roll-up, because at one time it was a tractor store. I think that those transom windows weren't actually original to the first. The problem is the one photo of the building we have, and I don't remember
It's in here.
1930 something. We don't actually know for sure, for fact, that those are original. But you can see that they've actually been altered, like the middle section where the door is. It's obvious that it's been changed. And that's part of my whole complaint is that, how much of it is really actually historic? Because the front building's been changed a lot. And
well,
so-
yeah. I don't think that's ours, I don't think that's anybody's.
Well, and I agree.
You can't dive into that pool, right?
Yeah,
So we have to just set that aside.
Yeah.
And
Well, like I say, the frustrating part for us, we thought we talked through all the things and did the right things, and
We're honest people, and that's what's really frustrating, is it's almost coming back like they're partly challenging like our honesty and integrity, and we've done what we thought was right. The contractor did not agree that those bottom windows should be taken out, and so we went to the city asking permission to, if we could do the bottom windows and the top windows. Joe Fisher came in, inspected it, gave approval. That's what we thought was that
Clarify
next
that
step.
point. You said the approval from Fisher was on 131.
That's when it's stamped. He might have actually come in, another date, but it's stamped. So we turned in this on the 26th, and then in Exhibit A, it actually is stamped the 31st of January.
So Mike, I want to come back to that and try to figure out what's going on there. But go ahead.
And I will say, Jay nor I were there, but our manager was there and spoke with Joe. So he looked at the door that we put on the Jefferson side and the windows.
You looked at the door on the Jefferson side that you could do anything with that you wanted to.
Correct. Because we've now put two, so there was another alcove door.
Right, I know.
And we eliminated that and put another garage door.
So is what Joe Fisher might have approved? Was that side?
I believe, wasn't he there?
He was there,
inspecting the
he was.
completed project, right?
I can't remember, but he came in and he looked at that garage door and these windows.
Yeah, while he was there, he looked at the windows too and agreed that yes, that it would potentially fall down if we took out the other windows.
Okay.
Do we have the actual permit that is numbered 489240073 STR?
Yes,
Do
the
we have that?
4824000073 SDR.
That's D. And does it have that on it?
No. If you read the application for Exhibit D, that tells you what that permit is for.
But we don't have, there's no correlate. How do we know that that number is actually this application?
Oh, wow.
Can I show you the building permit that we printed off the City of LeGrand Building Division today? Am I allowed to do that?
Yes, you can submit written items to the council.
Thank you.
I can hand them this? Okay.
The permit in Exhibit
This is on the.
D looks the same as the permit in Exhibit A, yeah?
Yeah, we should finish with the questions for the applicant, see if there's any additional public testimony. And then Mike can go and address what was said, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut.
So one of the things that was also marked in here is that it was never paid for, and here's from Knee that they paid for it on 131 with the how much they paid, and then there's and then the actual permit.
And did you not say that you had a written thing from the contractor that said that?
I don't have anything written from them. I mean, they would testify to anything because they came and inspected it. There was two of them, and they came and inspected it because that was our next process. Is we thought, well, we'll just go ahead and do the bottom windows because I mean those are the worst windows. And then when they came and looked at it, and so we also got permission in that meeting to replace the broken transom windows up above, or any of them that were cracked or broken and needed to be.
4 or 5 of them that are actually broken.
And missing. We actually have some that are just flat missing too, and so we've put plywood or cardboard or something up there. And so, but truthfully.
If I could interject, Councilor Meisner, I think it would be helpful, I'll have Carrie come and get that document and the other documents that you're referencing. She'll go up and make copies for the council, myself, Mike, so that we can all be looking at the document that you're talking about.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Take maybe a 5-minute break so that we can get those copies made and then we can reconvene.
Okay, that would be great. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Any other documents too that?
That is
Yeah, we
not
need
in
all
our packet.
we need all the information.
Okay.
we're going to reconvene. Continue. Is there more you wish to discuss with us?
I did just find the other email that I briefly mentioned, which is going to be in your guys' exhibit too. That between Mike and, it's the LG building at City of LeGrand, Sandy Bennett. Do you see any zoning issues with this application? And then Mike says, huh?
Oh, yeah, no.
Good, okay.
Sorry.
Thanks, Sandy. No issues with this remodel. They received Landmark Commission approval last fall for this project. The plans appear consistent with what the commission reviewed and approved. Thanks. Or please accept this email as zoning approval. So again, just with that stamp, Joe Fisher stamping the windows. And then this, again, from the city, because I would think that the city would make that decision. That was our approval. Had we, if we needed to go back to the Landmark Committee, that should have been told to us. It should have said, I'm really sorry, these sketches are not, you know, are not what they approved or whatever, but instead, nothing was said about that. It was, here's your approval, here's your permit. That's why the windows got ordered, and we have that in a timeline here. We ordered the windows on 2/13. So we waited for everything to come back, and they were not ordered until 2/13. There's a huge expense in these windows. And so, and again, they can only go into this building because they have been custom made for appliances and more on Greenwood and Jefferson.
The one thing I noticed was that, well, I don't think I have a copy of it now, the permit that you, oh, maybe we do, that you showed us, that you paid for, that was for the Greenwood project, on Greenwood. Not Greenwood, but on, or was it Greenwood or was it on Jefferson?
So this is kind of confusing. When we submitted both of these permits, there was one submitted for the garage door, one submitted for the Greenwood Street. They separated them, and so they've been separated. So when you look at that and the permit, and I guess I didn't look at it that close, but it has been separated into Greenwood. I don't know what they call it, the garage door. But, and it's in the exhibit too, that it shows the one that we filed, I think it's exhibit D, that it broke it down. They had us, where they had us break it down as the garage door because you had to put a dollar amount. So we had to break it down for the garage door one and for the Greenwood windows.
Right, because the one permit was for 54,000. That was the first one I saw.
So I'm
That's
confused about the timeline then. You ordered the windows February of '24 based on a permit issued late January '24.
Correct.
But the Landmarks Commission report to you of summer of '23 specifically says, other than the historic windows and transom, things can move ahead.
Correct. So that's when then Nehi came out to measure and do all of their work to replace the bottom windows, because that's what we got approval for. And they recommended that we do not just replace those bottom windows. They were worried about those transom windows not having the support that they would come down. So that's when we submitted this paperwork to the city asking permission to do the whole window as a whole, transom windows and the bottom windows, because that's what we thought was the next step. We have since learned now that that was not the right step, but we did not know that when we submitted this in January. Had the city said, whoa, 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 back up with your drawings, you have to take those back to the Landmark Committee, we would have done so. But they didn't. They gave us the stamp of approval and issued a permit, and that's where the problem is right there.
But doesn't the permit simply codify what was agreed upon? It's like Landmarks has told you what's special, so deal with that, and then everything else, here you go. You get your permit, it's predicated on the idea that you're going to move forward with all the changes you want, attentive to those specific things that Landmark wants of you. Am I understanding the process right? Yes. So when they issue the permit, the permission isn't carte blanche, go do whatever. It's do everything aligned with what Landmark's asked you to do.
Okay, so we don't know that?
Why don't you know that? Because it's here in the writing.
On the
Because,
permit, January 31st, it says the storefront windows, it doesn't.
because we specifically told them, ask the city, because after Nehigh said, I'm not gonna touch this because I worry about those transoms coming down, then we asked the city if we could get permission to do the other windows. Again, we didn't know.
To do the other windows, which, just specifically those.
To do them like this. The illustration that we sent to them, the pictures that we sent to them, everything, and it shows the transom windows. I mean, that's the thing is, we thought that that was the next step. We thought that illustrated out, like we didn't exclude transom windows. Everything was illustrated out with the measurements and everything. Joe came and looked at it, was explained the problem, and he agreed. Is Joe still around? Okay. Okay. Joe agreed and signed it.
Yeah, okay. But Joe's purview is not to overrule the findings of the Landmarks.
And again, we don't know that. So there has to be a communication in the city. Honestly, this has been a very frustrating process because the lack of communication is huge. And I truly blame the city. The city really should have stopped and said, whoa, 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 this isn't how this works. And they should have said, you have to go back and ask. But they didn't. Instead, Joe Fisher came out, they sent the inspector out, looked at what was submitted to them, and gave us a permit. So then we ordered.
The permit doesn't have the transom windows on it.
No, they don't.
No, but it says in the permit. So it says, remove existing windows, replacing with like-size 3 aluminum frame storefronts, which are the 3 excluding the door. The 4th one is remove the door, build the pony wall, install aluminum frame storefront window, see attached pictures. Which is the transom windows that breaks it out.
I am too, I think. I'm going to have a break from you for a second, if you don't mind. And Mike, I'd
No,
like
you're
to
good.
come up and we have questions still. It is a very confusing process.
Correct. We couldn't agree with you more.
Okay, Mike, can you clear up any of this?
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So when the Landmarks Commission, we have some of their notes. Is that available to the owners?
Yes.
Okay. So
All of this is public record.
it's public record. Are they giving copies of that so they understand?
They receive a copy of the decision order
Of the decision
and the
order.
staff report, the whole record, and they're party to the whole record.
Okay, okay. Because it does feel like this is a confusing process. I mean, starting from the very beginning, when you buy the property, that should be in your deed. And, you know, is that overlooked? But that's neither here nor there, but I want to kind of know our process on informing the owners. I mean, it seems clear in here.
Well, and this seems very clear to me. I'm not at all confused with what I see in the record, at least what's documented. But hearing the conversation, I can understand why it's confusing because we're mix matching documents that some are valid, some are not.
Right, and we need a paper trail.
So let's start with the clarification. Let's go to Exhibit D. That is the actual.
Mike, just out of curiosity, did you find this one that they had?
That is associated with Exhibit D.
Okay,
And
Exhibit
Exhibit D only.
Okay,
So let's
thank you.
go to Exhibit D. And Exhibit D is the building permit, and if you actually don't look at the illustrations or the actual stamped approval, look at the permit application. This permit application is for a job value of $12,702. It's to remove the indented wall containing the entry. These are the recessed entries. And then there's a garage door piece associated with this. That's the Jefferson piece. So that is what this permit is for. The email that was referenced, the copy of the permit, these numbers, this goes with this permit. That is what that permit pays for. That's what this pays for. That is what that email that says, here's the zoning approval, what they've described in their application, that's consistent with the Landmarks Commission's approval. That's the zoning approval I gave. And then to go with that, here's a copy again of the Landmarks Commission's approval with the cover page that says, here's the conditions of approval for this project that says that this is approved, but the transom windows, to reemphasize, have to be retained, repaired, and restored. That's in the zoning approval. And so that is what is that's the Exhibit D building permit that we keep referring to that Joe stamped, signed. That is the one that ends in 073-STR. That is a valid building permit for that project. Exhibit A, that application form that we keep referring to that is described, all these windows with the transoms, that there's no record of that ever being submitted. As far as the city records go, that document does not exist until it showed up in this appeal application. The attachments came from other documents and were attached to that. That is the best that we could identify because all of the numbers and all of the things associated with those documents are documents from other things that are valid, but they were pulled out of those and put with us. And I don't know where this came from because we have no record of that application form actually being submitted.
So this is Exhibit A, building permit application in the amount of $54,000.
There is no, there is no record of that application form being turned in or processed.
So
It doesn't exist in
If
our
something is sent in electronically, do we send out a response, we received your application, or, because sometimes you send something and it goes into the electronic abyss.
If you don't mind, Joe, since you're here, can you kind of explain how the online permitting, if somebody's going to electronically submit, how your process works for receiving an application?
But Mike, if I could interject, was any of this submitted electronically?
She's pulling up the email right now.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was relevance to the
Did
appeal.
say that.
Yeah, that's why I was like, okay, so, because if it's submitted in person, does someone like stamp it with the date or something received, or?
It ends up in the same place because then what our building permit tech does is they scan that information in, it enters it into our system, and our system is a state system. It's all online and it's all the permitting is online. We don't do anything in-house with paper. They scan everything and all paper stuff disappears.
Okay, so Joe, would you like to explain?
So once an application is.
From the.
You have to go up here to the,
Once an application is submitted to our department via in-person or through an email, it is sent to the LG Building Department at City of LeGrand. And then our permit tech receives that, sends out a notice, we've received your application, then it gets entered in the system as a record, and whether it needs to be submitted for plan review, or it could just instantly be issued to the person. They get billed, they pay their bill online, excuse me, and then the record is valid. Then you can start construction.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did you get a response? No, did you get a response from the building department?
So that's when they sent us this paperwork back on the 31st.
Okay.
So I have the proof right here.
Okay.
January 25th, the email, which you're looking at the phone version.
Right.
But I mean, it clearly states that it was sent January 25th at 3:47
Yeah.
p.m.
Okay, but that is pertaining to this one.
And it's the permit, it's exactly in Exhibit A describing the $54,000 permit.
Well, I know it's here in the records that way, but I'm not sure what you're saying. It's part of D really, though.
That is what the records that I've been able to find. So if and this is, and what you have for the exhibits that I provided are what the building department provided me for what they have on file. And so if there is something else that is submitted, then I think that's important information for you to have, you know, which would maybe at least show an error in procedural process. It doesn't change the Landmarks Commission's approval or the findings or compliance with city code, but it does create, you know, I think it validates at least the confusion that folks have.
And this says remove existing windows, replacing with like size, and it says 3 parenthetically, because there were 3 originally, although what seems to have been ordered is 4. Never mind that. But there's not a reference to the transoms here.
That's because it's one whole window unit. It doesn't break them up into each individual. Like that window is that whole size, so it's one window unit, 2 window unit, and then the doorway is your 4th, which specifies it in there, but it's a whole window. It's not little windows on top. It's ordered and made as a one.
But it'll look the same as it was original.
With the transom windows.
Right.
And then, again, though, the lower windows are, instead of doing a huge window that breaks really easy, those have been, because they don't care about that. We could make that whatever size or do whatever. So the transom windows above, yes, the below are split into 2, but again, it's one whole unit.
Right.
It's one whole window. But it's just so that when a rock does hit it, we're replacing this window instead of this.
Right.
And it's gonna match the windows we've already replaced that they approved. Yeah, where it's indented.
Yeah.
That were replaced at one time before, that were not historic any longer. Okay.
Councilor Meisner, could I ask Mike a couple questions?
Pardon?
Can I ask Mike a couple questions, please?
Yes.
So if we assume that the document that the applicant submitted for in Appendix A is a document that was lost by the city, how does that change the nature of the appeal? Because if I'm not mistaken, the Landmarks Commission said you can do everything except replace the transom windows. The applicant from the podium said that the Landmarks Commission said you can replace everything but the transom windows. So the application that was submitted that you provided in Exhibit A, although it has a picture, it doesn't specifically identify that you're replacing the transom windows. The language in Exhibit A on the application itself, it talks about replacing 3 windows. And so part of the confusion here is whether or not the application that you submitted was clear that you were also replacing the transom windows that the Landmarks Commission had said you cannot change. So that's where if we take into account the document that you provided that identifies the same language as on the page that you submitted in Appendix A is on this receipt, on this permit, that language is the same, that would lead me to believe that someone took that information off here and input it onto this form. The disconnect is it doesn't specifically identify replacing the transom windows, and we have explicit findings from the Landmarks Commission that say you can do everything except replace the transom windows. So that's the way that I'm kind of looking at the record. It appears to me that this first page in your Exhibit A related to the permit may have been lost by the city, but I don't think that it explicitly identifies replacement of transom windows, and there's no explicit approval from the Landmarks Commission to allow you to replace the transom windows. So I think that's the conundrum that we find ourselves in right now. And so my question to Mike is, if we assume that this document in Appendix A is in fact something that should be part of the record of the city, how does that impact the conversation that we're having today?
So is your question assuming that Exhibit A, as presented, was submitted and a third building permit was issued for that submittal? Is that what but we lost it?
Well, what I'm saying is, come here, I'll show you something, so you can make sure we're saying the same thing. So this document and these pieces are also part of Exhibit D.
And look here, this is important.
This language is reflected on this, which is also related to Exhibit D, right? The permit number is the same,
Okay,
right here.
yeah.
And this value plus this value is equal to this value.
Okay.
And so if you follow that logic, it appears that this is how that language was arrived at.
Okay.
So if that's the case, and the city just doesn't have this document for whatever reason, if we add this document to the permit, how does that influence what's going on? Because I think there's a conflict between what this says and what the Landmarks Commission said.
I don't know if the council's going to follow that.
Can I also,
Save your packet.
should I let him go, or can I ask a question or make a comment?
You can make a comment.
I don't want to. Okay, so the application that's referenced, this in Exhibit A, I'll read it again. Remove existing windows, replacing with like-sized, and parenthetically it says 3 aluminum frame storefront windows. 3 is what was on the bottom before. When they replaced them, they went with 4, and you said they line up so it's all one piece. That's only true if you go from 3 to 4, because then each big window has 2 little ones above it. There's symmetry. But if you were to do it original, the way you applied for, there would be 3 big ones below, but the transoms are separate because they don't align, because you have an odd number and an even number. So this really does to me read like you're only doing
Storefront.
the 3 big storefronts. It wouldn't make sense to have a singular piece because it wouldn't line up.
But it says see
Attached
attachment.
photos, and that's where it was very specifically 23 inches. I mean, it's very specific in see attached photos.
Well, there are a lot of photos attached. I'm just saying that if you're going to drill down and you're going to use the specific number 3, that leads me as a reader to think you're talking about the 3 big bottom windows, not the transoms. That's just how it reads.
Well, and if you look at where it says the Evolution Salon and Spa, it's 1, 2, 3, and then where the door is the 4th one that breaks out where you do the remove the door, build a pony wall, install. That's the 4th one because you have to remove that door, build that pony wall, and put in that 4th
No.
because they're solid units.
I understand that, but if you look at Evolution Salon and Spa, there are 3 big windows on the bottom, and the transoms above it do not perfectly align, but they do in your rendition below that.
And they are not going to realign because you are going from 3 big windows on the bottom to 4, but they still have the 6 transom windows up above.
It's actually 8, and,
So it'll go under 4.
right, but they won't align because you're going from an odd to an even. I'm just saying that if, looking at the language that's there and looking at the image, it leads one to believe that you were just looking at those bottom windows, not the transoms. Sorry, Mike, I
Yeah,
interrupted you.
so just on that issue, so we're dealing with 2 separate things. So we're
Right.
dealing with landmarks and we're dealing with building permits. I don't think there's any inconsistency, there's nothing different, there's no change in story or approvals or claims related to landmarks. That has been consistent since day one. And so the Landmarks Commission identified the transoms as being historic. Our historic district is like in 1894 to 1946. Anything in that period is historic.
And all of that is in the deed when someone buys the property.
I don't know if it's in the deed because that's, not everything's recorded, but that's a whole nother issue as to whether or not, a seller disclosed information or not. So that's not our issue. So for the landmark standards, the fact that those transom windows were there in 1930-something photo, they are historic, and from our standpoint, those are original. It doesn't matter whether they were actually part of the original construction in 1910 or whatever. The fact that they were there pre-1946 qualifies them as being equal to original. And so anything from 1946 forward is changed and then becomes non-historic and is fair game to adjust. And so from the landmark standpoint is they wanted those transom windows retained, and this proposal was to remove everything, put casement windows in that have a storefront window and what looks like a transom but is not a transom. It's just a casement window with two windows. It's a divided window. And so it doesn't look the same. It looks very different from somebody with a historic eye and historic mind and who's focusing on historic preservation. What was approved and what is proposed is very different, and the Landmarks Commission did not approve that. So anyway, but the Landmarks Commission decision is really not what's in question. What's in question, it sounds like, is what occurred after that. And, and so I'm going to try to summarize what Robert explained to me. So if you look at the building permit cover page that was just provided to you, there's a dollar value that says $66,702. I don't know if you see that when it's it's kind of in the top section under type. So this is an important number. So is everybody following me with that number?
I haven't found that one yet.
And this is for that building permit that is the number 73-STR.
Yes, got it, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, so then if you go to Exhibit D and you look at this building permit application, which is what was provided to me as the only permit related to, every building permit has a unique number. This one is unique to 73-STR. This one on the application cover page, so ignore the attachments, but on the application cover page, it says value is $12,702. That is not the value on this building permit form that was provided to you. So then if you go to Exhibit A, which is the document that we don't have a record of,
Okay, got it.
The added.
and you look at the 55-something thousand dollars and you add it to the 12,000, that adds up to the 66,702. So somehow both applications must have been submitted at the same time, application forms, in order to arrive at that number on this building permit valuation.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
It doesn't change the zoning approval that I issued
right.
or the Landmarks Commission's decision, but it validates the confusion in the process where the applicant applied for permits and they were lumped together, and they were lumped, two applications were merged together into one under this 73 STR. And what was issued and what's in the record is only part of that permit. And so that is a conflict from a procedural standpoint of what was actually submitted and what do we have for the record on file. And that is why my office is confused when the applicant says, I applied for this permit, here's a copy of it. And the numbers don't match. It's because I can't find that. And the building department didn't provide me that because I don't think they have that application form.
Because this one does say, remove existing windows, replace with like size 3. And you did 4.
And that would be something that I would not have approved because we would have caught that in the zoning approval. But that somehow made it through the process, got submitted for the building permit, and is now creating a conflict, which we are now talking about today. And that is information that I'm learning tonight that changes the picture a little bit. I don't know the answer to Robert's question is, what does that do for the process? But it doesn't change the standards.
No.
Doesn't change the Landmarks Commission's decision, but it does put you in an uncomfortable
Yeah.
position of how do you deal with this, because, I mean, I have an opinion of what I think should occur, but, you know, but also what I think should occur doesn't follow code. And so, I don't know how you want to move forward with that, but I don't have an answer.
Yeah, my suggestion would be this. The disconnect with the permitting creates a challenge for us to figure out what we do about that element. Because we have, in my view, there are 2 major pieces here. One is the standard for preservation of the transom windows, and that needs to occur. I think one of the applicant's significant concerns is custom-made $54,000 of windows sitting there, and how do we deal with that situation? And I don't think it would be appropriate for the council to rule on this appeal until we have an opportunity to sit down with the applicants and take a look at this to see what alternatives we have. Because I don't think that the council can, at this juncture, render a decision on this because of that disconnect, and appreciate you having the additional documentation so that we could figure that out. My suggestion is that we table this to the January meeting to give us an opportunity to take a look at the record in total and then come back.
Then I am happy to move to table. Definitely. A second.
I'll second.
No discussion on
It's been moved, yeah, we don't even have to vote. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded to table this issue until the January meeting. All in favor?
this. Aye.
Aye.
We're sorry that it's inconveniencing you, but
Another one.
we don't
And
know.
it's frustrating, I'm sure.
January meeting is, and I'm just going to
Yes.
tell you why, okay?
Oh, it was
It's January 8th.
Yeah.
January what?
8th.
I am a coach for basketball, and we've missed our kids' games multiple times coming to these different meetings, and today was yet again. So this really hits our heart when we have to keep coming to these meetings because we're missing our kids' activities. So I get where you're going, I absolutely do.
Me too,
But
don't
it's
worry.
very, very hard as a coach because I'm not there coaching, and then my 2 kids are playing. So January 8th is
We'll-
what we're.
We'll get it done.
We'll get it done on January 8th. However, you will meet with the city prior to that date.
And this is
To
a
discuss.
learning experience, I think, for all of us,
Yeah.
Well, and that's-
communication-wise and everything.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's the thing. It's very frustrating on our end. We don't know all these steps.
Right.
We know now. We had no idea what these steps were, and so we thought we've been doing the right thing. So it's frustrating when we just keep getting roadblock after roadblock. And again, we do have that $54,000 that's sitting over our head right now. They could start hitting us with storage fees. They could start hitting us with fine. I mean, it's just gonna start adding up. And so it has been a learning, but communication.
I mean, that's the thing, we did actually think you could do the grant, we did.
If I could interject, one of the things, the council has tabled this item, so I don't think we should continue having a discussion with the council. I think it was fair to talk about the personal impacts. When we start talking about the nuts and bolts of it, that's something that's part of the appeal that we need to not continue to have a conversation about. Thank you.
And they will get a hold of you. Okay. Thank you. We're sorry for the problem, but, okay. So the next, okay.
Are we okay to leave?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Where are we? I'm looking for my deed. Okay. Right there. Okay, C. Okay. So the
5C.
next part now is 5C.
Yep.
We're announcing a public hearing is still open for the ordinance to be read for a second time by title only and considered for adoption, and that the rules of order for this public hearing were read in its entirety during the regular session of November 6, 2022. Staff report. I think it goes to you.
Thank you. So at your last meeting, there was really no testimony about this one. There's no changes that we're recommending. Again, this is solving some language changes that we need to have to come in compliance with the current state laws, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anyone have any questions? Any
This
discussion?
is the establishing rules and procedures for contracts and purchases.
Right.
Okay. There's like 260 pages in this, so
Yeah.
make sure I'm in the right
Yeah,
spot.
this is the procurement one.
This is the one,
Okay,
yes.
good.
Okay, so then I'm going to close the hearing and entertain a motion.
Is there any public testimony?
She asked, nobody
I
ran.
did.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I apologize.
I move that the proposed ordinance approving procurement ordinance be read for the second time by title only, put to a vote, and adopted.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this ordinance as a second reading and by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LeGrand, Union County, Oregon, establishing the rules and procedures for contracts entered into and purchases made by the city, and repealing Resolution 2, Series 1990, and Resolution 4, Series 1994, and all other ordinances and resolutions or parts of ordinances and resolutions in conflict herewith, and declaring an effective date.
Thank you. Or we have to vote now, I guess, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it's approved. I would like to open the public hearing on second reading by title only of proposed ordinance amending Code of Ordinances, enforcing foreclosure provisions and sale of surplus real property. And our public hearing is still open from before, this is the second reading. Staff, and I would assume it's you.
It is me. Thank you. So again, this was the one where we already have the authority to foreclose if there are liens, but we wanted to go ahead and add this to the city code just to make it very clear from a transparency standpoint, and also to cure a conflict related to real property that would include personal property in the city code that is now covered under the procurement ordinance, which you just adopted. So this one, again, is more of a housekeeping thing and just clarifying for folks that we do have the authority to foreclose, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Invite public comment. Anybody would wish to speak about this ordinance? Okay. Any counselor want to discuss it? Okay. Then I would like to close the hearing and entertain a motion.
I move that the proposed ordinance amending Code of Ordinances, ordinance enforcement, foreclosure provisions, and sale of surplus real property definitions be read for the second time by title only, put to a vote, and adopted.
Second? Is anyone second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions about it? Okay. Carrie, will we read?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LeGrand, Union County, Oregon, amending Chapter 1, Article 2, Ordinance Enforcement, Section 1-54, Assessment of Costs in Chapter 2, Article 5, Finance Division 2, Sale of Surplus Real Property, Section 2023-1514, classification of real property of the Code of Ordinances, City of LaGrande, Oregon, and declaring an effective date.
Okay. We need to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we will go to unfinished business, which there is none. And we'll go into the new business, which is considering the resolution reallocating the ARPA funds to sidewalks. For sidewalks. And I would assume that's you,
We're doing
Robert.
those in.
After this.
7A.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we moved B and
Yeah, we moved B and
D
D down.
to the, okay. So we actually discussed this at the last council meeting. The intent is, because we found other ways to provide the $250,000 allocated to the fair to support the infrastructure, and the need for sidewalks, the request before you is to reallocate $250,000 that originally would have gone to the fairgrounds, but now is not needed because we've identified other funding. It would then go to streets, but now we're diverting it to sidewalks. So the resolution cleans that up and makes it very explicit that that is what we plan to do with that $250,000 of ARPA funding. Happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Anyone have any questions, any concerns?
I think it's awesome.
Okay. Public comment? Okay. Council discussion? Nope. Okay, entertain a motion.
I move that the proposed resolution reallocating $250,000 of the ARPA funding from Union County Fairgrounds project to the sidewalk projects be read by title only, put to vote and passed as presented. And further, that we authorize City Manager Robert Strope to award the bid and execute contract documents with the successful bidder of the open bid process.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we're going to.
We do need to read the resolution by title only.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I've lost my sheet there. They're all over the place here.
Zipping right along, you're doing fine.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, reallocating American Rescue Plan Act funding to new specific projects.
Okay, now I have to ask for a vote, huh? Okay. All in favor now, again?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion passes. And I see you pulled 3B off.
Yeah, 3B and 3D. One is for the concrete, and the other one is for the paving, and I'll let Kyle go ahead and talk to these.
Okay. Yes, Kyle, would you like to?
Madam Mayor and councilors, I don't think I've ever got to say Madam Mayor in my career here, so that's new. We're going to start with 3B, which is pulled down, and that's awarding the contract for supply of asphaltic concrete. So asphaltic concrete is basically asphalt. What this is this contract would supply all of the asphalt for the projects that will be completed by city crews under the ARPA funds. So recently, Heather, our finance director, has found, we need to have these funds obligated by the end of the year. And this is one of those steps by putting those things into a contract. So what we've done is we've sent out, asked for those bids from our local suppliers. We'll take a look at those numbers. And then this council action form was written in the manner where you will give City Manager Stroke the power to award that bid and execute those contract documents, so we don't have to have another special session later in the month.
So we don't have any particular contractor yet. This is just anticipating.
Yeah, this is, so this one encapsulates.
Eliminates a step.
Yeah, we're the contractor, so city crews will lay the asphalt. This basically is a supply contract where a local supplier will say, we will give you 7,500 tons of asphalt next year for this price.
Now, have some of this work, I noticed in here that you have, like Willow Street and all, weren't those already done?
Willow is done.
So we're asking for the concrete that's already been done?
No, the asphalt, there's specific projects, I believe, named in the council action form that will be completed by the city crews. These will be Harrison, Division, East L, and 6th Street.
The Willow is the East L from Willow to 20.
That's it.
Yeah, it's not
okay.
Willow.
Yeah,
So just naming the cross streets that frame in the project.
it's kind of nice. I like to drive down Willow. It's nice and smooth.
It's nice.
Not so much 6, but Willow.
We'll get 6 next.
Or 12 either. Yeah, that's bad. Okay. Any public comment on this issue? Council?
And these are all, we've already budgeted all this. It's just giving you a
Yeah,
thumbs
some of
up.
it's in this year's budget, some of it will be in next year's budget because of the timing. But we do have to enter into the contract so that we have the documentation that we need for when we submit our report in April on the obligation of the funds, that there is no question.
Okay.
We're essentially contracting for the materials that we will use by the deadline of December 31st, 2026.
Okay, yeah, we need to do that.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize the city manager, Robert Strope, to award the bid and execute contract documents with the successful bidder of the ARPA asphaltic concrete material supply open bid process.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve. Yes. Do I have to say the whole thing again?
You don't have to say the whole thing again?
I'll just say, yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we move on to the, consider awarding contract for paving contract, excuse me.
Correct. All right, so this second council action form is along the similar lines. This is a process we're running through to obligate the funds, and these will be projects that are completed by a contractor outside city staff. So these streets are 12th, Walnut, N, and a portion of Monroe. So what we do here is we just open an open bid process. We get all the contractors to supply us a bid. Then City Manager Strope will award the bid to the, we're going to say, apparent low, and we'll execute the contract for them to complete those projects next year.
Any public comment? Okay. Council discussion?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? Entertain a motion?
I move that we authorize the city manager, Robert Strope, to award the bid and execute contract documents for the successful bidder of the 2025 City of LeGrand Grande and Inlay Roadway Projects open bid process.
Second.
Okay. Any other, I guess, additional comments? None. Ask for the vote. Vote. Don't have to read it again. The motion that we approve we authorize Robert to do this. I don't have to read that again, do I?
You don't.
I didn't think so. Okay.
All-
Okay. Anybody opposed? No. Okay. Done. Okay. Union County Commissioner update, Matt.
Councilor Meisner, Mayor and councilors, good evening. I was able to even run an errand and come back for this meeting. This is a dandy. I got just a couple updates here. Our emergency manager, Nick Vora, was awarded Emergency Manager of the Year in the state of Oregon. It's a huge honor. He does a fantastic job, and this probably won't be the last time you'll see him get this award. He's doing amazing, and we're very, very lucky to have him. I ran into the director of Oregon Department of Emergency Management at AOC last week, and I told her not to steal him from us. I really hope he doesn't go anywhere, because he is really fantastic. Speaking of awards, also Dana London with Buffalo Peak received Merchandiser of the Year for the Pacific Northwest. It's fantastic. Small little public course like Buffalo Peak, and we get recognized for Merchandiser of the Year, we'll take it. So really, really happy to see that out there. Met with BLM today at our morning meeting, and she mentioned that the Interpretive Center in Baker City is free this month. And they're open Thursday through Sunday, and they're remodeled and did everything. My son even took a trip there last month and said it was fantastic. So just wanted to throw that on everyone's radar. Friends of the Children, I know a lot of you know that they're coming to LeGrand. They did receive all their funds. They're having 2 open houses, one on December 5th, this Thursday, from 1 to 4 at the library, and December 6th, this Friday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I do have a flyer, and I will leave it with you guys to make copies of. So if there any additional information you need, that'd be a good one to attend. The other thing that's happening with Union County is the Sheriff's Department is offering a 10% discount on dog licenses for next year for this month. And open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., excuse me. I think 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can go in and do that. Just need your updated rabies card for your pet. So good time to go save 10% on your dog license. We did have Senator Lieber, Representative Levy, and Senator-elect Nash come last month and visit the fairgrounds. Fantastic meeting, went very, very well. I mean, she came all the way from Portland to come look at this project. Thanked her quite a bit. I handed her my one-pager with all the, I've been handing out to everybody, and she's like, boy, Matt, I knew you looked familiar. I thought this was already done. Like, that's the number one answer from every legislator I run into over there. We just keep falling through the cracks. But her coming over here, I'm really optimistic about this happening this legislative session. And I'll be going about every month, January, February, March, April, May, until that gavel hits the table. And hopefully we get it through this year. Especially we haven't had a devastating fire here in a while. It's not if, it's when. And I guarantee we will need those fairgrounds operational, fully operational. But you've heard me talk about that for a long time. I was going to thank Councilor Howard for the thankless position that you've done, and I appreciate all you've done here doing that, but it sounds like you have another meeting.
Yeah, maybe not. We'll see. I feel a tickle in my throat.
But anyway, if I am not here, I wanted to thank you very much for all you did for the city of LeGrand and all your, everything you've said and done. Fantastic. But yeah, we have another doozy meeting in January, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. And if there's anything else, that's all I have.
Okay. You too.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Staff comments?
Oh, they're awake.
I just wanted to brag a little bit. So this time of year, the last 3 years, we've had a inter-shift competition to see who can collect the most canned goods. So the guys go and they buy food and bring it in. We have a weigh-in. It's kind of a fun deal. Last year, we donated 1,700 pounds. This year, it was 2,706 pounds. So we just took it to Cross Motors today. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Congratulations. City manager comment?
Holiday open house, Wednesday, the 11th of December, here in the council chambers from 4:30 to 6 o'clock. Hope to see you all there.
Okay.
That's all I have.
City council comments?
I passed out the Repair Cafe information. I think that's a neat thing. There's a group of citizens who gather quarterly and they have expertise in various things, and you bring in whatever is broken, a new zipper, fixing a washing machine, fixing a bike, fixing a computer, and they'll do it for free. So they want to keep things out of the landfill, and there's engineers, woodworkers, carpenters, contractors, seamstresses. So yeah, I think that's a nice thing, and they're hosting it at the library this time. They've been alternating between the library and the new apartments on 26 in their community room. So I think that's a nice thing.
And when did you say they were going to be here?
It's on the 15th.
Of December, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and I think that's, all
Sounds
sorts of
good.
Christmas stuff going on now.
Yeah.
Pump track is open at the park. Stu's not here, so we can't give him a shout out for his help, but a nonprofit locally has done a lot of heavy lifting to get free BMX bikes for kids Wednesday and Saturday afternoons. Call it the BMX Library. Every kid gets a free helmet if they show up. And we've had, 40, 50 people out there on a Saturday afternoon riding well into the dark. And there's plenty of bikes. That the Wild Horse gave us a great foundation grant. And so even if you don't have a bike, you can show up, ride the pump track for a couple hours, have a good time. So pass it along. The more kids out there, the better.
Nice.
It's great.
Where do you keep the bikes?
Stu's giving us a storage shed there right now. We're hauling them over.
I guess the only one I have is, I wasn't here in town this weekend, but I heard that the parade was absolutely fantastic. You were in it, weren't you, Carrie?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a picture of you and Charlie. So, I think Timothy took a bunch of pictures.
A few.
A few. Well, I know you're few.
It was a great parade and very well attended.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Okay. So that's all I have, and I wish everybody, I guess we're going to adjourn this meeting and we're going into urban renewal. But my next comment is, Merry Christmas to everybody. That doesn't stay. Okay. And we'll have a, 5-minute, Brent? You see the rake?
5 minutes?
5 minutes, okay, 5 minutes. Calling the urban renewal to the agency regular session. Call to order. Roll call, please, Terry.
Justin Rock.
Here.
David Glave is absent excused. Corinne Dudo. Nicole Howard.
Here.
Molly King.
Here.
Marianne Meisner.
Here.
Denise Wheeler.
Here.
Agenda approval.
No changes. No changes.
No changes. Consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Public comments. Vicki, do you want to say anything? Okay. You're the only public here. Public hearings. We have none. We have no unfinished business. So it's new business and it's approval recommended, approving a recommended changes to the call for project policy. And that is Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know it's been a long night. I'm going to try to be fairly succinct. Try not to keep you here too much longer. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, Mayor. Acting Mayor. Okay. So before you tonight are some proposed revisions to the urban renewal call for projects policy. And so just very quickly, following this year's July 8th special meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency, where we reviewed and approved funding for this year's projects. We also asked the members of the agency to submit any comments, suggestions for improvements. We did get a few minor changes. We reviewed the policy revisions as a staff and have submitted those proposed changes for you tonight. I won't highlight all of them because there's a few things, quite a few, that are really just grammatical cleanup, some minor revisions. There are a couple of things that were a little more major, and I want to make sure that you've had a chance to look at those. First of all, in item C, section 6, we really clarified the process for allocating the up to 65 discretionary points per project by both agency and commission members. That was a change we've kind of changed that over the years, and there was still a little bit of confusion. So clarifying that both agency members and advisory committee members have the ability to award up to 65 discretionary points per each application through the process. So clarifying that language. The other piece, item G, gets a little more complicated, and there's actually a couple of different pieces to G. And this one relates to both the call for projects, and you'll see it resurface when we talk about the facade grant. But one of the things we wanted to do was to clarify, because there's been increasing opportunities where property owners have maybe initiated a project with a facade grant, got in, did a small grant, discovered there's a bigger project, or found that there was capacity to do a bigger project, come back later doing a larger project with urban renewal. And the language between the two policies was not consistent, and it was a little confusing in terms of even specifically to just the CFP, when you could apply for a call for projects if you had already applied for a facade grant, or if you went the other way and you did a major renovation and maybe 2 years later you need to do a minor renovation or a minor fix. So this whole section G, predominantly items 11, 12, 13, and 14, really seek to kind of clear up that language. And so I think that was probably the biggest change And then again, making sure that those then are consistent between sort of both policy documents. So if somebody's starting a project with a facade grant and it evolves and they later come back for a call for projects or vice versa. And then the next big thing in this policy is item H. And then this one basically removes the reference to submitting scores in advance. When the advisory council met, and they really felt like this was a place where they felt it would be appropriate that in this one, that instead of submitting your discretionary points in advance, that all scoring would take place the night of that special meeting, and that council or agency members and advisory council members that were present would then do their scoring that night after the presentation. So I think those are the three sort of core changes. And then, as I mentioned, there's some minor just language clarification, a couple of grammatical changes. But I think those are the three significant changes. So are there questions from the agency on any of those?
I appreciate all your work. This is really clear and clean. Yeah. This is
Self-explanatory.
really and fair. So I like it.
I gotta find the page.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we have
So,
to.
yeah, thank you.
Approve this, don't we?
Yeah.
I just have to find there it is.
It's here.
Back to the
Yeah,
language.
there we go. Public comment? Okay. Agency discussion on this? Okay, entertain a motion.
I move that the agency adopt the recommended changes to the urban renewal call for projects grant policy as recommended by the URA Commission as presented.
Second.
So it's been moved in a second that we approve this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think the next one is also yours, Timothy.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. So the second item is the Main Street facade grant policy, which is also funded out of urban renewal dollars. And when we started kind of looking at the updating the call for projects policy, we obviously discovered we needed to take a look at the language regarding how the two policies might be used consecutively or in tandem. We also realized that the facade grant program had not been updated since I believe 2015. And so there were some other policy changes that we thought needed to be updated. Again, making sure that we were being consistent on those policies. And so we did actually reach out to Main Street, who actually implements that policy or the actual application process. And Sarah, our Main Street director, was able to sit in on that meeting with the agency and the advisory committee, and so she was able to be part of that conversation as well. So this one does have a few more things. Again, lots of sort of minor wordsmithing, but I'll just quickly highlight some overall ones. First thing was really just the original policy didn't have much of a sort of a policy purpose statement. So Section A really adds that paragraph clarifying the purpose of the facade grant program, and Section B clarifies the eligibility criteria. So that's all fairly new. Section C really goes back to just make sure that the language in terms of using this grant program in conjunction with call for project so that the language is now consistent between both documents. And then in section E, we identified and clarified a little bit of the application submittal process, so that there are, it's clear where the applicant starts the process. There's some timelines in terms of when the applicant submits, the timeline for when Main Street would review, submit that recommendation. If it has to go to landmarks, that it would be submitted, recommendation pending landmarks. And if it, once it's approved, then it would come back to staff. So, and then section G, again, really coming back to making sure that we're consistent also with call for projects, where we've had a long conversation over the last couple of years about clarifying conditions of approval, requiring permits, work has to be permitted before it starts, has to meet all of the permit requirements. So again, making sure that language is consistent in the Main Street Grant Program. So those are, there's a few more changes. They're pretty substantial. Again, the two new pieces in terms of clarity and purpose and some process. But ultimately, the program remains relatively the same. We fund it through urban renewal. It's administered in partnership with Main Street, and then Main Street makes a recommendation for approval based on landmarks if necessary, and permitting. So, are there any questions specific to the Main Street grant?
No, but I will say, being on the facade grant committee, this is really nice. It really clarifies it much easier.
So, thank you. Yeah, I think it was helpful having Sarah there as well from Main Street to be part of that discussion.
Mm-hmm. Any public comments? No, okay. I don't want to leave you out. Agency discussion?
Good revisions. This was so muddy like 8 years ago, and it's so much better and clearer, and good work.
Well, thank you. And I would have to just extend thanks to the agency and your committee members as well. I know every year after we do our special meeting on funding, we solicit any feedback and comments, and really kind of, as the agency works through these and we find those little things that, maybe there's an inconsistency or there's a piece of the process that could be a little more fluid, getting that feedback helps us kind of continue to streamline the process and make it more user-friendly each year.
Okay. I can entertain a motion if there's no more questions.
I move that the agency adopt the recommended changes to the urban renewal facade grant policy as recommended by the Urban Renewal Advisory Commission as presented. Second.
So moved and seconded that we approve this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Finished.
Thank you.
And, oops, gotta go back to my original one. I don't know if there's anything. Just a second, I gotta make sure everything's here.
I think it was staff comments and then
Thank you.
me
Is it
comments
the
and
same
then
thing? Okay.
agency comments. I have nothing.
And you have a comment?
I have nothing.
Timothy, you have a comment?
I have nothing to add. It's been a long night for you guys.
Nope.
Hit the gavel.
The only thing I'd like to say is something that you said earlier, is as a reminder to the community, we are always looking for committee members. And I don't know, is the Urban Renewal Agency, the advisory committee, or is it full? No.
Yeah,
Okay.
we need to do some recruiting.
Yeah, we need to do some recruiting. So if anyone's interested, please contact. And at this, I will adjourn the meeting.